everyone! Do you remember last week's episode? We discovered something interesting on Seoul subway screen doors.
좀 한국시에서 해외시까지 넓혀보자 해서 각 대사관들에게 추천을 받았다고 해요.
대사관들도 같이 했어요?
그렇죠. 아무래도
We diplomats cannot miss out on projects where embassies are involved. So, we decided to talk to 9 out of 27 embassies that participated in the subway poetry project about their poems. And 참여해주는 대사관들의 시를 모아서 그 나라 언어와 한국어를 같이 넣어서 약간 이렇게 시집으로 펴내면 어때요?
시집 내는 거 좋은 것 같아요.
That's how we prepared. Last week, we encountered poems from Slovenia, Greece, and Germany. Which country's poems will we meet today? Our journey begins again at the subway. Our destination is Gwanghwamun Station. We walked from Gwanghwamun Station and kept walking until we finally arrived at So I'm now at the Embassy of Ireland. It takes about 5 minutes to walk from Gwanghwamun Station to the embassy. And we met the Irish ambassador here. Before we talk to the ambassador, let me first introduce you to an Irish poem written on the screen door of the subway. It is William Butler Yeats' The Lake Isle of Innisfree.
I will arise and go now, and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin build there, of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and I live alone in the bee-loud glade. He sort of evolved and became famous at a time when our cultural identity was at a bit of a crossroads. There was a slight sense among some Irish people that we didn't really know who we were. Were we part of the UK? Were we a people apart? And Yeats had devoted a huge amount of his life to learning Irish folklore, to understanding generations and generations of material that perhaps was in the Irish language. Some of it wasn't written down very well. And he brought that to life, and he made it relevant for people at the beginning of the 20th century. And so he was central to a process which we call the Anglo-Irish Literary Revival, which gave people the words to articulate what it meant to be Irish, helped them to couch it in traditional Irish folklore and old stories and old songs and old superstitions. And in the process of helping us to articulate what it meant to be Irish, he laid the foundation for our independence. So some of it was about poetry, some of it was, he wrote plays. He wrote a very important play called Kathleen Ní Húlahán, and that was the story of an elderly woman who had had a difficult life. And that story was supposed to encapsulate Ireland and Ireland's struggle and our experiences and all we had learned and our struggle for liberation. So he was hugely important.
So tell me about the poem, The Lake Isle of Innisfree.
So I'm no poetry expert, but basically he was writing about a place that he wished to retreat to. Now you know you can interpret it in lots of different ways. You can couch it in the historical context, in the fact that Ireland was quite troubled at the time, but really it's just about retreating to a beautiful place and finding sanctuary. Actually, for a lot of Irish people, he just is very good at describing the place. And when you're homesick, when you're miles away from home, Yeats is what you want to hear. It's a great poem to have just for the commuters standing there trying to fight onto the subway, an opportunity to just escape. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of the morning to where the cricket sings. There midnight's all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and evening full of the linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore. While I stand on the roadway or on the pavements grey, I hear it in the deep heart's core.
This poem is on display on screen doors at 3 subway stations. So, do you have like other Irish writers that you'd like to introduce to Korean public?
So I think if I had to introduce another poet, the one that is underappreciated in Korea is Seamus Heaney. He wrote a lot about transition in life, transitions in society. He wrote a lot about class and memory and what it means to be of humble origins and the human condition. So I would definitely encourage people to pick up some of Seamus Heaney's poetry. And in Korea, one of our greatest contributions is Kevin O'Rourke, who I think we've talked about before, and he was a poet, and so that's a book of his poetry, the music of what happens. And he wrote poems about what it meant to be Irish in Korea. And it just really, really special stuff. So I would love a way to bring Kevin O'Rourke's work to Korea. If you wonder why Korea is in your blood, look to the heart, to friends who endure, to loyalty green as pine and bamboo, and to flowers that have bloomed in the snow.
Our next destination is the person I'm going to meet at Myeongdong Station today is...
Nice to meet you too.
Let me introduce the Chilean embassy's deputy head of mission.
So let me see the poem. Where is the Chilean poem?
Absolutely, like the poem is right here at Myeongdong Station. Myeongdong Station is located just a few meters from our embassy.
The Chilean embassy is only a 3-minute walk from Myeongdong Station. And here at Myeongdong Station, you can see Chilean poetry.
This is the Chilean poem.
Exactly.
Since we met at the subway station, there was something I wanted to ask him.
Do you sometimes use Korean subway? And I'm wondering what is your impression about the Korean subway?
Actually, yes, I use the metro quite often. It's a system that is very widespread throughout the city. So it's very useful for us to go from one point to the city to the other using just one ticket and just one system. And it's a very easy way to understand and to explore Seoul.
Then, shall we take a closer look at the Chilean poem at Myeongdong Station?
Te amo, mujer de mi gran viaje, como el mar al agua, que lo hace existir, y le da derecho a llamarse mar y a reflejar el cielo y la luna y las estrellas.
So tell me about the poem.
Why we choose this poem? There are two main reasons. The first one is because it's a short poem, so it's very easy to every single person who's taking the metro here in Seoul, if they're able to see the poem, to read it and to try to connect with that poem. And the second reason is because it's a poem that talks about journey, love and journey. And actually we think sometimes, like, when we are taking the metro and we are very into ourselves, into our phones, that we are not getting connected with other people. Actually, when we are using our phones, we are trying to connect it with our loved ones. We are trying to say, okay, I'll be at home in a minute. I'll meet you there in 20 minutes. So it was a very beautiful way to try to connect his poem, but also with the idea of movement, like the metro.
So tell me about the poet. How is he recognized in Chile?
Well, Vicente Huidobro is one of the most important poets in Chile, especially from the 20th century. Among Nobel Prize winners, Pablo Neruda and Gabriela Mistral, he's one of the most important poets.
Then let's listen to another poem by Huidobro.
Sobre la nieve se oye resbalar la noche. La canción caía de los árboles. y tras la niebla daban voces. De una mirada encendí mi cigarro. Cada vez que abro los labios, inundo de nubes el vacío. En el puerto, los mástiles están llenos de nidos y el viento gime entre las alas de los pájaros. Las olas mecen el navío muerto. Yo en la orilla silbando, miro la estrella que humea entre mis dedos.
Actually, Vicente Huidobro is not just important between Chilean writers, but also in Latin America. In the first half of the 20th century, he was very well known because he developed an aesthetic theory called, in Spanish, creacionismo. So a lot of writers, they took that like an influence. And also we are trying to underline his view about love and the lack of love because it's a very remarkable identity of his poems.
You can read this poem at Myeongdong Station and Hwaehyun Station.
For us, it was very important to be able to show to the Korean public a new writer. Gabriela Mistral and Pablo Neruda, they've been already translated into Korean. So I guess it's very important to share with you other authors, contemporary authors. Among them, I will say Diamela Entit, Alejandro Zambra, or Nora Fernandez. And if we come back to the 20th century, because we have very strong writers, two very important ones, I will say Isabel Allende. She is already, her books are already translated into Korean, some of them. Hernán Rivera Letelier also, and Pablo de Roca, for sure.
If you have a chance to go to Myeongdong Station or Hwaehyun Station, be sure to look for the Chilean poem. Our next destination is City Hall Station. The person we will meet at City Hall Station is
Happy New Year!
Feliz Año Nuevo. This is in Spanish.
How do you say it again?
Feliz
Feliz
Año
Año
Nuevo.
Nuevo.
Feliz
Año Nuevo.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
and on the screen doors at City Hall Station,
He is a Peruvian poet of the greatest Peruvian author, Cesar Vallejo.
Cesar Vallejo. How does it feel?
I feel very happy because it's a country where the mother tongue is not Spanish, and I can see Cesar Vallejo's poem here, so I'm very proud of that.
Oh, wow.
Mi padre duerme. Su semblante augusto figura un apacible corazón. Esta hora tan dulce, si hay algo en él de amargo, seré yo. Hay soledad en el hogar, se reza, y no hay noticias de los hijos hoy. Mi padre se despierta, ausculta la huida de Egipto, el restañante adiós. Esta hora tan cerca, si hay algo en él de lejos, seré yo. Y mi madre pasea ya en los huertos, saboreando un sabor ya sin sabor. Esta hora tan suave, tan ala, tan salida, tan amor. Hay soledad en el hogar, sin bulla, sin noticias, sin verde, sin niñez. Y si hay algo quebrado en esta tarde y que baja y que cruje, son dos viejos caminos blancos, curvos, por ellos va mi corazón a pie.
So now, let's learn about the author of this poem, Cesar Vallejo.
Tell me about the poet Cesar Vallejo.
He's one of the more greatest authors from the Hispanic tradition, and also he is the best author in the 20th century. He is known as the saddest poet or the saddest man because the majority of his work talks about poverty, human condition, but even that he is very popular, not only in Peru but also around the world.
So there must be a number of works of his, but why did you choose the one called Los Pasos Lejanos?
His work normally talks about poverty, this like a dark themes, but Los Pasos Lejanos is a poem for the Father's Day. So he talked about the old age, also the life of his father, his mother, and himself. But he also talked about the satisfaction of his father, the emotional of his father. So it's not so dark as normal his work is.
But do you know why the Peruvian poem was introduced in City Hall Station?
I don't know why, really, but we are really thankful of that because this station is near to our office. So when many Peruvians go to the consulate to do the procedures, they can see and feel proud that a Peruvian author is in this station. So yeah, it's very nice.
That's right. The Peruvian embassy is a 3-minute walk from City Hall Station.
So who translated this poem to Korean?
In 1989, there was a professor, a Korean professor, who studied in Latin America, and he wants to translate some anthology of Cesar Vallejo into Korean. So the embassy sponsored this work, and now we have a book going more than 50 poems of Cesar Vallejo into Korean.
So what would this project mean for cultural exchanges between two countries?
I think the literature is a way that the author shows the point of view about a country. So we have many writers, and if you can understand the point of view of the Peruvian writers, you can understand the point of view of my country. So this is an amazing way that people from around the world can understand a country.
So other than Los Pasos Lejanos, what other works would you like to introduce to Korean?
I would like to introduce Mario Vargas Llosa, who is considered one of the most important contemporary novelists. He won a Nobel Prize in 2010. Most of his novels talk about Peru, but there are some of novels of him, like La Fiesta de Chivo, which plot is set in another countries. So he's like a novel for the world.
If you have a chance to go to City Hall Station, be sure to look for the poem of Peruvian poet Cesar Vallejo. Today, we were also able to meet poems from various countries while riding the subway. I think it is really cool that you can come across poems from other countries that you didn't know about in the subway, transportation you use every day.
For Irish people, poetry is really important. Poetry is a huge part of how we are, who we are, how we express ourselves. And so it's just such a treat for us to introduce our poetry to Korean commuters.
And we were very happy to be part of this project because for us it's it's one of our goals to share our artists, in this case our writers.
Because we live in a globalized world, so people can have any kind of information. Also can read literature or can know about different authors, and this information allow the citizens open their horizons, open the way that they see in the life.
What do you think? Don't you feel a little closer to Ireland, Chile, and Peru thanks to their poetry? Our poetry journey by subway continues next week.
I have brought my school poetry book.
Oh my gosh.
From my high school days. I actually had it at the residence, and this morning I thought I'd bring it in. There it all is, right? It's all of my scribbles when I was a student. But we all remember our bits of poetry from school. It's as important in Ireland as learning maths is.